Thank you for joining us for this Chapter Chats discussion for Introduction to Instructional Design Theory and Practice. We are going to be discussing Chapter 2, Learning Theory Through the Lens of ISD. I am here with Dr. Chuck Hodel. Chuck, what is the deal with learning theory? In other words, why is it important and why are there so many of them?
Learning theory. It's like flavor of the day or something at Dairy Queen. In instructional design, you got to think about this in the sense that if we are indeed a science, which I believe we are, then we need to look at how we learn and how we transfer information and how we get people to actually take in information, short term to long term memory, and then they have it, we hope, for a period of time. But there has to be a way that that happens. And this is what science looks at. So all of these different learning theories are different people's ideas about how this happens. And sometimes these get legs and they last for generations and people talk about them and think about them and act on them. And other times you'll hear it once because there's really no support for the idea or it's just not different enough to be something that people invest in. So, in this chapter in the text, I think it's important for students to think about the fact that as a science, we have to have this foundational knowledge or foundational approach to how people learn to be able to later turn this into the mechanics of instructional design.
Now, you say in Chapter 2 that learning styles are a narrow myth. Can you explain that?
Well, I think everybody that's an instructional designer, certainly everybody who's a teacher or a trainer, anyone else that's had any instruction at all on how to teach or design curriculum has heard that there are learning styles. So we're visual learners, we're auditory learners, we're tactile learners, whatever category you want to put us in. And it somehow that magically makes this information pass better from teacher to learner. Well, the truth of it is it doesn't. In fact, the research shows that when you use a style that is not what one perceives to be their favorite or best learning style, they actually learn better because they're challenged. So when you look at instructional design as a science, you have to start throwing out some of these things that are urban legends in some cases about instructional design and teaching and learning that really make no sense. And we have to think about if we're going to try to teach and we're going to try to design and do things professionally and based on a science, then we start to have to look really seriously at some of these things. And there are folks that will fight to the death that learning styles make a difference, and that's fine. But just realize there's nothing to back that up. And as I said, unless it's a very vertical population of people that have special needs for learning, then really your best way to go with this is to challenge them rather than support a particular learning style. So if you're a visual learner, let's have you do something else. Or if you're a tactile learner, let's have you read or however you want to look at it. But challenge learners to the point that they actually engage. And I think this is really where we're going with this is if it's easy for a learner, they're less likely to engage and to actually get in and take the mental space they need to learn something and go to mastery.
Can you describe the differences between pedagogy and andragogy?
Well, pedagogy and andragogy are two things that are fun to say. Nobody says them right, including me, because we always trip over them. But the idea is one is mostly for populations under 18, and one's for populations over 18. So andragogy is over 18. Pedagogy is usually look at a K-12 environment when we talk about professional instructional design. Now, there are differences that people will try to make on this. And in the book, you'll see that there's some discussion about what's it mean to be a mature adult. And every state has different laws on drinking and driving and everything else. So we're going to arbitrarily decide that 18 is the best place. The way I look at it, and I think a lot of people look at it, is once it's a post high school age of most of us, which was 18, 19 years old, then you start in to get in the andragogy.
That's helpful. You mention Bloom's taxonomy in this chapter. Can you explain its purpose in ISD?
Well, there's a lot of talk about Bloom, and people try to do better versions of it and explain it away and say it's not that useful, but it's actually extremely useful because this taxonomy looks at subjectivity in terms of what people need to be able to do, observable and measurable. So when you're writing objectives, these are your behavior statements in instructional design. And the beauty of Bloom is that they are on a line, on a continuum from entry level to novice. And you see this in different portions of this text, and we'll talk about those in later chapters. But the idea is here you have an entire set of things to look at. So when you need a behavior statement for an objective, look from left to right, from easy to hard, and you can find where your population is and look at a group of these words that works best in an objective and also for obviously mastery.
And the last question I have is, what are the key elements of Gardner's 8 multiple intelligences?
Gardner's work is so incredibly important. And the reason it's important is because it looks at intelligence in a different way. So we're used to IQs and SATs and GREs and different ways to try to categorize people based on a standardized test. And what we have here is this notion that all of us are probably very good at one thing or two things. Some of us at more. I'm not one of those, but there are these people that are good at everything. And the notion here is that as we start to look at these, we start to think about how we teach and design differently. And let's take an example. Let's look at an incredibly good musician who can play an instrument at age 3 or 4, and they go on to be the top 10 or top 20 in the world at what they do. Um, they might not be that good at math. They might not be good at lots of things, but they can musically take it off the table and there's no competition. So think about that in all of these multiple intelligences. So look at nature. How many people do you know that just really connect with nature? They're more comfortable there. They want to know everything about it. They're great gardeners, or they want to be zoologists, or whatever there is associated with that. And I think when you start to add this whole notion of multiple intelligences to your palette of things to think about as an instructional designer, what you come up with now is another dimension. You have added this whole new way to think about things. And as you're designing, if you're within one of these intelligences and you can identify populations that are going to resonate better than others, then you probably need to look at, okay, what do I do with the group that doesn't resonate well here? So it's like me in biology. It's not happening, right? And you have to look at it and say, okay, what are we going to do for the Chucks? Or what are we going to do for the Denises that don't resonate in these particular intelligences? How can we better present this information and get through to them so we can get them through to mastery and where they need to be with this?
Thank you for shedding light on some of these principles that you brought about in Chapter 2 of this book. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for this session of Chapter Chats.